Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. As usual, we start from the front lines update and from more or less good news for Ukraine. However, nowadays it's hard to say about any sort of the good news, especially today. I would consider those a mixed news since Ukraine started a counteroffensive not far away from Mirnograd and not far away from Pokrovsk. But as you see, at the same time, Russia gained more territories. Well, what Ukraine used for the last day to propel forward in this place are the Bradley vehicles. I've told many times on this channel how good those vehicles really are. And guys, honestly saying, just with advantage of military weaponry, Ukraine has the chances for victory. Because if we speak about the human resources, Russia has always more. But the Western-made vehicles are much better compared to the Russian-made, so if Ukraine has enough quantity of those vehicles, yes, Ukraine is able to counterattack, as we see over here. We even have the assault video of the Ukrainian Bradley. Yes, it was spotted on the drone camera, and it is that particular place in the Pokrovsk direction. As usual, our guys use lots of the smoke on the vehicles to cover them against the Russian FPV drone strikes. From what I saw, Russians rarely have that feature. So Bradley went right on the Russian position, those are the Russian trenches. Bradley landed the infantry, the Ukrainian infantry went directly to the trenches, and also Bradley opened the fire towards those trenches. Ukraine usually uses a single vehicle or maximum two, just to avoid the heavy losses in case of Russia using artillery or FPV drones. While later on Russians thrown the mid-wave trying to regain the positions, but Bradley was there also securing our guys. So this operation was a successful one for Ukraine. As usual, the full video I'll share on my Telegram channel. My friends, if you like the job that I do on YouTube daily, you may also consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link for my Patreon page in the video description just below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. Stay awesome. But after all, my friends, if we zoom out from this area, you will see many of the Russian strikes, many of their attacks throughout the front line. And it is not yet the full military update of the situation. Yes, we have more update from the deep state military map, and they say that the situation there is definitely terrible. Let's just go to the timeline. It was yesterday, it is today. The change for a single day is dramatic. Russians occupy at least one settlement almost every day. And the situation in Kurakhivka is very critical. Well, actually, I thought that the Ukrainian army will hold over here because those are very important heights. But it seems like this time for Russia, those settlements do not exist. They go very fast. Like, by the way, they did in big settlement of Selidova. It's the town. So we have the information for today that Russians managed to occupy it fully, as well as the nearby village. They spent not more than 7 days for it. Again, 1 week ago, today. It's the fastest Russian propulsion since 2022. Yes, also with the greatest losses in this war, but Russians are taking the ground and it's their main goal. They do not really care about the price, and unfortunately, guys, I may state that the front line for Ukraine on the east collapsed. Well, not everywhere, but mostly on the south. After Russians took Vuhledar, they propelled quite fast. Also Kurakhivka direction, Selidova direction. Near Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, Ukraine tries to counterattack, as you saw, but Russians do have the advantage. Yeah, some of the Delulu experts will say that it doesn't really matter, Russians propel still slowly, but at the same time they cause losses for the Ukrainian army. And the Ukrainian army is needed to secure the other Ukrainian territory. So for Ukraine, what is happening in the east is critical, and it's not about the territories, it's about the Ukrainian army. Ukraine should protect its army. At the same time, Ukraine tries to save territories, but you see that it is not working. For this reason, Ukrainian forces have to withdraw, giving the enemy the ground, but securing themselves for the future battles. I have already filmed a big video describing you the issues in the Ukrainian army and within the Ukrainian military command. I'm not gonna repeat this stuff, but what I see that the problems in Ukrainian army and in Ukraine in general continue. And if it is so, Ukraine should right now prepare the defense somewhere in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, in Pavlograd, and in Dnipro city itself. Yeah, I may say Dnipro city, it's quite far away from the front lines, 159 kilometers. But if Russians manage to break through Ukrainian defense over here, it means that they will expedite their assaults because there are less defense lines on their way, less settlements, especially in this area, so Ukraine should build the robust defense already. Well, I would say that they should have been built a long time ago, but unfortunately we know the situation with defense lines and it is terrible. especially then you have the flat terrain as in this entire region. The flat terrain is actually not that bad for defense, but only with robust defense lines. So that's what Russians showed us on the south. Then they built the robust defense, and you can see everything over here. Ukraine doesn't have those kind of the defense lines. All of the lines are mostly single, they're separated, but this defense is well made. After all, I may conclude that the Russians built this defense and Ukraine wasn't able to break through the second defense line during the counterattack which happened the last year. Yes, Ukraine liberated those territories, they are now shown in green, but Ukraine didn't concentrate the forces for a single powerful strike as our Western allies told Ukraine to do. Ukraine thought to break the Russian defense in many of the points, including the Bakhmut direction. So simultaneously Ukraine used a limited number of the forces in many of the directions. By the way, it is happening right now with the Kursk operation, because the best of the best forces of Ukraine are actually fighting over here. I mean 47th Brigade, which tries to hold the positions, and for now Russians stuck there. I think that for the last week there was no successful movement of the Russian army in Kursk. You know what Zelensky said today? That the Kurchatov nuclear power plant wasn't the target of the Ukrainian military operation in Kursk. Sounds kind of strange because here we see the direct vector towards Kurchatov. So I think that after all it was the idea for Ukrainian military command and for Ukrainian government to capture the nuclear power plant and to exchange it for the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. But the plan didn't work out, so that's why Zelensky is saying that it wasn't really the target, but I think it was. Right guys, so what can I say more about the case? I would say that all of this region will go into the Russian hands maybe this year. We can see the two vectors of the Russian attacks, and definitely they will try to avoid the battle for Kurahovo. Their aim is to cut the main supply road for Ukrainian army, so Ukrainians will be forced to retreat from this position without any battle. It is the usual Russian strategy to advance in the collapse tactics from two of the directions or sometimes from three. But I haven't seen yet that they might advance using these tactics on this vast territory. This territory is really big. Before they were successful on the small ground, for example, over here, if we go 2 weeks ago it was like that, and later on Ukraine just moved the forces out, it was forced to move the forces out. Now we have this picture. But the current scale, as you can see, is much bigger. Also, by occupying Davydov, Russia created one more vector of the attack towards Pokrovsk. They'll advance from this side, they'll advance from this side to Mirnograd. They'll just try to create the same picture. And my forecast that unfortunately this year Russia has the great chances to occupy Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. Yeah guys, I understand that those news are not good, but we need to say about this issue openly as it is. I will not provide you with some of the delulu information saying that Ukraine is always winning. No, the enemy is much stronger than Ukraine. What I just can say that Ukraine needs more military support, that's it. You may see on the front lines that the Western-made weaponry is much better compared to the Russian-made, and our guys mastered to fight on the Western-made equipment. And even successfully using ATACMS on the occupied territory of Crimea. A couple of days ago, Russia lost 2 of the S-300 air defense systems. We have the confirmation about it from the Oceanid analytics from Ukraine. As for example, Ukraine mastered some of the sophisticated aviation equipment like F-16s and this Black Hawk. Yes, Ukraine just has 2 of those helicopters, even Taliban has more. Because after the United States of America left Afghanistan, they also left some of the vehicles, many of the vehicles, including those birds. The machine is great and I wish Ukraine had more of them, but we have what we have. I know how Ukraine obtained the first helicopter, but the funds for the other one were collected with the help of the volunteers, so actually people bought the other helicopter. I may say to you 100% that without the people's support, without volunteers and all of the aid from the ordinary people, Russians would have already been in Dnipro city. That's what our guys on the front line say, that Russians would have occupied all of the Donbass. But what's about the recent news where Ukrainian victory plan was mysteriously uncovered by one of the biggest media sources? I mean uncovered fully because in the secret part of the plan Ukraine should obtain Tomahawk cruise missiles. Well, at least according to Zelensky's version, but I'm sure that in the coming years Ukraine will not obtain those missiles. But guys, there is one big problem. Okay, ChatGPT, what happened to the ground-based Tomahawk cruise missiles in the United States Army?
They were dismantled.
So actually, yes, they do not exist any longer, and you cannot launch this missile from the air. The only way you can launch those missiles is from the ship or the submarine. That's why I think that the request of Ukraine to obtain those missiles is kind of weird. So if Ukraine wants to obtain the Tomahawk cruise missiles, at first it needs the military ship capable to carry them and launch on the Russian territory. The good thing that the range of the missile is absolutely enormous, but I don't see how Ukraine might use those in the Black Sea, because Russia still has superiority in the Black Sea. They still have their Black Sea Marine fleet. Yes, it was partially moved out from the Sevastopol Bay because there is the threat from the drone boats, but they still may use their aviation, and they have Navy aviation, fighter jets, they have lots of the military bases in Crimea. They finally may use their strategic aviation to kick the ship out or the submarine. So for Ukraine, it's a big problem. And based on this information, I'll put the big question on that. So yesterday I found out more information about the Tomahawk missiles, and now I'm sure that Ukraine will never get those. Well, probably there will be other modifications of the other missiles delivered to Ukraine, but not the Tomahawk. It's just impossible, actually, physically impossible. That is why I have the question in the competence of this part of the secret victory plan. Yes, previously there were some of the ground-based versions, but they were dismantled. Dismantled, it means scrapped, recycled, so there are no more those missiles existing. Just the marine-based, that's it. The South Korean president's administration said that they are not looking to transfer artillery shells to Ukraine because of the threat of the North Korean soldiers in the Kursk region. But I think that they just previously said that stuff. I think that finally South Korea will transfer those shells. Maybe in a few months, then the North Korean soldiers will be spotted in Ukrainian front lines. I also do not exclude even that variant. For now, Russia plans to use North Korean soldiers just in Kursk. By the way, tomorrow Ukrainian military officials will meet with South Korean military and they'll discuss the possible military support. So yes, for now it's early to say. Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, went to the Russian propaganda TV. I guess since the beginning of the war, he is the first European Union politician at that high level given the interview to the Russian media, which is blocked in the European Union. So it was the Russian channel Russia 1 with infamous Skabeva, basically a Russian propagandist. She's always screaming on the Russian TV, and yes, sometimes I also watch this bullshit just to make some fun jokes about it. So Fico criticized the European Union countries for supporting Ukraine as if this only prolongs the war. I don't want to use bad words, guys, because YouTube is sometimes angry on that. Ukraine, under West pressure, refused to peace agreement in Istanbul. Yes, there were some of the agreements at the very beginning of the war. Then Russia realized that it is not able to achieve its goals with the Blitzkrieg operation, but now Russia plays a long-term game. The Istanbul Agreement is basically capitulation of Ukraine, where it should give up the vast power of its military. It shouldn't go to any sort of the military alliances, so it gives the Russia full opportunity to attack Ukraine once again. Western sanctions against Russia are not working. You know, here I may partially agree with this Mr. Delulu about the Western sanctions. Russia found the other markets. It is still capable to sell its resources to India, China, South Asian countries, African countries. They even trade with NATO countries like, for example, Turkey. And by the way, Russia continued to sell its resources even to the European Union countries like Hungary and Slovakia. There is the oil pipeline which goes actually through Ukraine. So Ukraine lets that oil to go to Hungary, Slovakia and other consumers. Yes, half a year ago there was the information that Ukraine blocked the transit, but it lasted for just several months. As always, I tell that this war is kind of strange because the Russian gas and oil go through Ukrainian territory. Even in Suja, which is now taken by Ukrainian forces, everything works normally. There is a big gas hub for the Russian transit. And no one is striking it, everything is normal. There are some of the Russian specialists, some of the Ukrainian specialists, and they work in the same building and even in the same rooms operating the facility. Well, here sometimes I think about the conspiracy theories, but you know, I don't have any sort of the proofs. So I tell you the general information which I can confirm, and the information is that Ukraine continued to transit the Russian resources through its territory by the time that there is the full-scale war in Ukraine with heavy losses. I don't understand that, I cannot even explain that, that is why I lean to the conspiracy theories, sorry. So Fico during his interview didn't criticize Russia or made any critical remarks, but at the same time he criticized the common West and how it wants to bring Russia to its knees instead of achieving peace. So is this Delulu really a prime minister of the country which is the member of the European Union? I think that he and Orban just hate the European Union values. They would like to establish some sort of the dictator regime in their countries, like Russian ones. Well, also this Mr. Delulu said that he would like to attend the military parade of Moscow marking the 80th anniversary of the victory. And he wants to express his gratitude to the Red Army. The Red Army, which actually started the Second World War together with the Nazi Germany by occupying Poland from both of the sides. It just happened that Hitler attacked the Soviet Union 2 years later, but before that, actually, Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were some sort of the allies. All of that is fixed in the documents between Soviet Union and Germany. The secret was revealed only after the Soviet Union collapse, that there were definitely negotiations between Soviet Union and Germany of how they divide Poland. And Russia doesn't mark the anniversary of the end of the Second World War, no, they mark the end of the Great Patriotic War, which is the period of time of the Second World War. So for Russians, those 2 years before do not exist in their history books because actually it's the shame. And also Fico added that EU needs Russia and Russia needs EU. Well, guess I just wonder how from the closest ally, Slovakia, which supported Ukraine with the fighter jets, it turned out to this. It is just crazy. Just no words where some of the countries in Europe are heading to. The Economist came out with the article, don't look at the title because they always like to make those screaming wild. Well, here they explain the situation also with the Russian army, and they said that definitely the Russian army struggles with their army men. They're setting those into the direct mid-wave strikes, but with those kind of the heavy losses, they cannot continue like that for a very long time. So soon, Russians will face the dead end in their assault operations. So according to some of the classified channels in the West, and they rely on the information coming from the Russian sources, that the Russian generals asking Putin to announce a new massive mobilization or just to launch it. So they might cover all the army needs, but Putin hesitates to do so. I think that Putin waits for the results of the elections in the United States of America, and later on he may announce a new mobilization really. Some of the videos filmed and shared by Russians, how they lost their Strela-10 air defense system. It was hit actually by the FPV, but here they say that it was HIMARS, actually not, it was FPV, and there was the video published about it around a couple of weeks ago with the operation of Ukrainian FPV against this particular unit. A couple of words about Zelensky. He was on a press conference, he recorded lots of the videos. I see the trend that he mostly started to blame our Western partners for giving not enough support. Well, I wouldn't do it at least openly, especially right now before elections, because Ukraine is being supported by the ruling White House administration, which is blue. And Zelensky himself says that it is not effective supporting Ukraine. So people in the United States who like Ukraine, who support Ukraine, would think for the alternative variant to vote, for example, for Trump, because he promises to finish the war in Ukraine very, very soon. But actually it's a trap. So it's not the proper time for critics, and I think that the critics should not be that open from the Ukrainian officials. Yes, it should be presented in media, but then Zelensky says that it looks not good. Well, at the same time, I understand that Ukraine just gets the fraction of the military support needed, but unfortunately we have what we have. For now, we cannot influence Western politicians, and blaming them unfortunately will not change that situation. It should be the long behind the curtain work with electorate of the United States, with people of the United States, with the Ukrainian lobby in the Congress to propel the interests of Ukraine. I know that that sometimes I also criticize that Ukraine is not obtaining enough military support, but it is me, the guy on YouTube. And I understand that there is nothing much we can do in a nearby perspective to change that situation. Even if Kamala Harris gets elected, there is a small chance that Ukraine obtains more military support. Because, for example, it could be blocked again by Congress. Yes, there will be the Congress elections soon too. And we'll see who gets the majority. Zelensky said that Ukraine obtained just 10% of what was promised in the military package voted this year. But it is logical because that military package should not be in Ukraine this year alone. It's the long-term package. So Zelensky said 10%. 10% is 6.1 billion United States dollars this year, which I consider kind of the low sum. I tried to search for it in internet, but I wasn't able to find a reliable source to calculate all of those military packages of the Ukrainian support. I mean, we have lots of the announced military support with additional packages, but what Ukraine actually got, Zelensky said, is the military support for around $6 billion. Well, I heard that the logistics takes more time than expected. Maybe that's the issue. But I don't like the statements sometimes coming from the Ukrainian news saying that Biden blocks the military support or slows down it for purpose. I don't think that there is the case. Also, I think that Zelensky should put more attention on the Ukrainian army and reforming it, because our guys, our military, are screaming about the reforms, which are not happening unfortunately, and General Commander Syrskyi is okay with that. And also, unlike Zaluzhny, he's very loyal to Ukrainian government, and sometimes it plays not a good role. Yes, I understand that I may get some of the hate because of my personal opinion, but my opinion is based on some certain facts and the situation inside the Ukrainian army and the opinion of our commanders, local commanders, on General Syrskyi. So to describe those politicians, leaders, whatever, there is the statement in English: never create idols so you won't be disappointed in them. Breaking news: in the UK, the BAE Systems Factory on fire. It is one of the biggest military equipment producer. Well, for now we can see just the smoke coming, so probably the fire is not that huge. Rheinmetall Corporation, the other military producer, say that it will open some of the factories in Ukraine. Immediately, the Kremlin spokesman Peskov said that those will be the legitimate targets for the Russian military. Well, the Rheinmetall office said that it's not the first time that they hear the threats from the Russian side, and they will continue to build 4 of the factories on Ukrainian territory. And they know the ways how to secure those. Well, the good thing that Ukraine also has its own military production. For example, Ukraine is capable now to produce around 20 of the units of the self-propelled artillery system Bogdana. This vehicle is definitely awesome and quite cheap compared to its competitors, and also has the opportunities for upgrades, so maybe Rheinmetall or other military corporations may invest in this kind of the project. For example, to increase the fire range of the system. Serbian President Vučić was speaking with Putin by phone. He called Russia to cease fire right now and start negotiations with Ukraine, but Putin responded no, they'll continue the war. That's the statement of President Vučić. Russia is not looking for peace. So it seems like everyone is pushing Ukraine, Zelensky or Ukrainian government, negotiate with Russia, but no one asks Russia whether they want to negotiate or not. The answer is no, Russia doesn't want to negotiate, especially when they have the advantage on the front lines. Exactly the same idea comes from the commander of the 3rd Assault Brigade, Zhorin. It is obvious that the West is far from understanding the real situation and plans of the Russian Federation. The only truth we should remember, so definitely the Russian army could be stopped with the help of the military action, nothing more. And the same Kremlin spokesman said that Russia demands Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk Oblast from Ukraine plus Luhansk, and also Russia started the assault in Kharkiv region, so soon they're gonna demand Kharkiv region. It is a never-ending story, and if Ukraine negotiates with Russia right now, Russia will just attack Ukraine a little later. Then the world will forget about the events in Ukraine and will be just sleeping. So guys, the situation is actually difficult to continue the fight with prevailing enemy or to negotiate the peace with Russia given the territories Zaporizhia. Come on, this variant is absolutely not possible. And Russia wouldn't agree on other ceasefire scenario. They need the lands which they wrote to their constitution. And Putin still thinks that he is capable to take the ground using his military power. Well, in that case, he would lose hundreds of thousands more soldiers, but he simply doesn't care. But to finish on a positive news, the situation in Russia is also not that great with their economy, with their army, and inside the Russian political life. So there could be the variant with a big political or even military crisis inside Russia. That's the best case scenario for Ukraine, but something big should happen for this variant to work out, like for example Prigozhin scope the last year. Well, in the coming years the similar variant is also possible in Russia. And Ukraine, well, it should hold to save its army, and there is no other variant. Well guys, and now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and as usual I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.